This is the IBJ podcast for the week of December the 12th, 2022, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. This is the time of year, for better or worse, that we usually take stock of our investments and either count our blessings or lick our wounds. And sad to say, there hasn't been a year when traditional equity investments, aka the stock market, have behaved this poorly since 2008. And we all know what happened in 2008. Of course, 2022 can't compare to the financial meltdown and Great Recession, but that doesn't take any of the sting out of seeing our portfolios slip 20% into the red. IBJ personal finance columnist Pete the Planner is in the same boat and isn't looking forward to his annual financial review on New Year's Eve. But Pete does have a pocket full of silver linings to pull out. Markets go down and they go up. It's a healthy cycle. To benefit from the cycle, you need to make sure that you are taking advantage of opportunities to save money and eliminate debt. In the podcast this week, Pete shares the questions that he asks himself at the end of every year to make sure he's positioning himself for success. It all boils down to a concept Pete calls the power percentage, which he will explain. He also ventures to make a few predictions for 2023, and as I mentioned, the markets go down and then they go up. Here's our conversation. As always, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast Peter Dunn, aka Pete the Planner. How are you, sir?
Happy holidays.
You asked that like it's a question.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering, like, if it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, are you having a good holiday season, Mason?
I think it's going to be good.
I think so too. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty chill right now. I mean, I will note, and no one cares, I had a massive case of the flu last week. Massive, like almost killed me. It was awful. Get your flu shot. Did you get your flu shot?
Oh, you kidding me? I got a 7-year-old at home. Of course I got my flu shot.
Okay, well, I'm an idiot. I didn't get a flu shot, and I was in the fetal position for 72 hours last week. So get your flu shot, people.
Yeah, it really does help. As we look out over 2022, what is Pete the Planner's headline for 2022? That's the laziest question I could think of.
That's decent, right? I've heard you ask much worse and several times. I'm just kidding. I would
You're
say
lucky that you're a friend of mine.
Hopefully you made the right decisions with the amount of money you put away this year, because the money you have put away hasn't done its job this year, right? So hopefully the decisions that you made to the amount that you put away are good, because if you're looking at your money to have performed for you, boy, will you be sadly disappointed, because it's been a bloodbath.
Yeah. Not maybe as bad as it was a few months ago. I forget how far down the market was, if you just want to look at the S&P 500.
Sure.
But now it's like, according to my internet, it's today's a good day. And just for posterity's sake, we're recording this on December the 8th. S&P is down about 17% right now for the year.
Yeah, that stings. I mean, year end in 21, it was up nearly 27%. In 2020, despite the fact that the world somehow ended, but we all survived, it was up 16%. And in 2019, it was up nearly 29%. It's been since 2018. We had a down year in 2018 at down 6%. So, I mean, for some people, this is quite the shock. If you go up 28, up 16, up 26, going down 17 this year, that's a lot. That's a lot of money, Mason.
I went back a little bit. I think you have to go back to 2008 to find, anything even close to this kind of drop for a calendar year.
Yeah, in 2008, they always feel a little bit different, right? 2008 is when Bear Stearns failed and the recession took hold because of the housing crisis, and we were down about 39% that year. So this one, I think it's with the pandemic and the economy shutting down in 2020. We've contextualized this one a little differently. And I also, and I don't want to taint it too much with my own personal perspective, but I think a lot of people have this sort of ominous view of the next 6 to 9 months of what the economy could be. And so the market's just sort of a prelude to that. It doesn't actually feel like the worst part.
You mentioned, they talk about the possibility of a recession. It really does kind of come down to like how you define recession. We used to, I think we generally would call it 2 consecutive quarters with negative GDP, but then we had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, but everybody said, "Oh no, that's not a real recession." It's not.
Yeah,
it doesn't really. It's not like a real recession.
Yeah, facts are fleeting these days, but a lot of people argue we're already in a recession, right? I mean, some people argue that it's just, it's going to deepen over the next 6 to 9 months. Although it does feel a little bit, and again, I'm not an economist, right? Do I say that every show? I do feel like I think we're gonna experience some pain. I think you used to have a lot of small employers, a lot of tech employers laying people off right now. I think that's going to probably accelerate in the next 2 weeks. I mean, at this time of year, there's a couple different reasons businesses lay people off. Number one, to hit their number from the expense side, to say, look, I'm not going to hit my bonus unless we trim some expenses. And that's a really glib way to look at this, but that's the way people do it. And that's why jobs go away. But in this circumstance, what we're saying is you've got corporate leaders worried about third and fourth quarter of 23, and they're solving those problems right now by getting lean with their payrolls.
In terms of just looking at your investment statement, right, it's been a terrible year for that. I would assume that the advice, however, is don't panic. This is an opportunity. This is the time you need to buy stuff when it's cheap. So don't stop putting your money in the market.
I mean, Mason, like a lot of American men, my primary goal in my life is to impress my wife. Okay, like that's what I want to do. And so on the afternoon of December 31st every year, I go into my little den. It's just an office, but I've been calling it a den because I feel like I'm getting older. And so I go into my little den in my home and I calculate a bunch of stuff. And then I walk out with my chest pushed out and I'm like, honey, and I like tell her all these great things that the market has done, but I take credit because I put the things in the market. This year, Mason, that feeling, I like the chest will be sunken in. I can't take a lot of credit because honestly, as I'm about to look at my favorite thing to do, December 31st in the afternoon, I really do this. It's going to be terrible because my property value will have decreased, based on the value of my home. I calculate that into my net worth. All of my holdings will have gone down. And I hate to say it, I've got 2 or 3 individual holdings that have gone down well in excess of what the S&P 500 have gone down. So what I can take away is that what we have done with our income in 2022 is still a very healthy thing and will put us in a good place eventually. But man, it's going to feel bad. It's going to feel bad going into the new year. And I got a long night ahead of me on New Year's Eve because I'm staying up till 12:02 or so.
Yeah, I know you've got a process that you go through. And there's not a lot you can do to change the fate of the money that's invested in the markets, but there is stuff that you can do that you can control in terms of your overall net wealth. First question, as I understand it, that you can ask yourself, did you max out your retirement plan contributions?
A lot of people love to not. I'll tell you that. And what they'll say is, well, I did the best I can, which I appreciate. I mean, look, I made a bad food choice for lunch. I did the best I could, though. I didn't put cheese on it. Like I did the best I could. Still not a good choice, what I did when that tenderloin. But I'll say this. Anyone that listens to this podcast, and I mean any reader of the IBJ, I understand the demographics here. The goal is to max out maximum contributions as allowed by the Internal Revenue Service into your employer-sponsored plan. To hit the match, and this is where I sound a little judgmental, arguably condescending and snooty, to hit the match is just not enough. It's just not enough. It doesn't, you shouldn't feel good about it. You shouldn't take solace and, well, at least I'm hitting the match. It doesn't matter. It's a fool's errand. The goal is to max out. And so as I sit down December 31st, and I start looking what I did. Did I max out? Yes. Okay. So therefore, from a retirement perspective, Mason, I've done everything I can in the low-hanging fruit division of tax sensitivity. And so I feel good about that.
Right. The max for our 401k, I think for most 401ks, is 14%. Is that correct?
It is not 14%. It is 19,000. It's 20,500 is what you can put in a 401k in 2022. 20,500 American dollars.
Oh, okay.
Now, you can use it, look at it from a percentage standpoint, but percentages depend on what your income is. But the dollar amount you can put in is $20,500 if you're under the age of 50. Of course, if you're over the age of 50, then you get a catch-up contribution on top of that, and so you can put more than $20,500 in. And that by the way, that catch-up contribution is $6,500. So you can actually put in a total of, and I'll do the math for you because I know it's late. You can put in $27,000 if you're 50 years old or older, which I am not. I just look that way in 2022.
So hold on, let me go back. So let's say I'm 25. I make $45,000 a year. I thought that I would only be able to contribute 14% of my income to my 401k.
That's not correct.
That is not correct. I would be able to contribute whatever percentage I want to get me to that 20,000 number.
Yeah.
Wow. My mind is blown. I didn't know you could do that.
Wow. Look, I mean, this is why I'm on the show, to blow your mind. I mean, you could Google this, but well, sure, you waste my time. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let's say there really was 14%, because that's what I believe. So
that's what you believe is definitely how the news and facts work in 2022. That's what I believe.
I swear to God, I don't know where I got this, but I got it. So, but I knew it was 14%. Let's go back 4 or 5 years, maybe even more than that, 10 years. And I'm like, well, how much should I put in here? And I could not bring myself to put in the max. I said, 8% seems like just about all I could do. And I assumed, I mean, you know that other people are like this as well. For whatever,
of course,
they cannot bring themselves to do the max. Why? What psychologically is going on there? And I will preface this by saying, I've had this conversation with my wife as well, who for whatever reason is not interested in maxing out hers.
Here's the thing. It's really hard. Like I'm not, when I sort of joke about this stuff, but I don't mean it judgmentally. This is stinking hard to part with that much of your money. So what we do is we try to convince ourselves to do it, and then we don't. What I think the better method is to set your contributions up higher than you want to, and then realize as you're sorting out your money and your behaviors, making decisions, that you can actually do it. I mean, that's half the battle here, is just like forcing yourself to do it and then adjusting on the back end with how your cash flow works. Now, for some people, you're peeling off what's the math? $1,600, $1,700 a month to go towards your 401k seems like a lot of money. And that's fine. But I would definitely push yourself much further than most people do. Now, where the 14% may have come from, Mason, may have been from one of our conversations. Because what I often talk about is to perfectly save for retirement, you want about 12 to 15% of your gross income going towards your 401k. Now, that's not maxing it out. That's doing what you can to lead to a good retirement outcome. So I think I'm the cause for you conflating the two concepts.
Okay.
I'll blame me for blaming you. That's right.
Hold on. I'm looking this up now. I'm going off script. Oh my God. The limit on employee elective deferrals is 22,500.
Can you leave this in the show where you ask me to come on the show? I give you a perfectly good answer, and then you Google it to learn that I'm right.
Hold on. I would look this up one other way.
What, you going to Bing it now? You Googled it. Now you're going to Bing it. What's next? Dog pile? Ask Jeeves. Who are you going to ask Jeeves to find out if I'm right?
Percentage contribution to 401k.
This is a good time.
Sorry, dude.
Oh, that's all right.
I feel like you just told me that God doesn't exist.
That's on the next episode.
Yeah. That's the end of the year episode. Okay, you're right.
Of course I'm right. I mean, if I'm going to be right about anything, it's going to be about this and where to get a good buffalo chicken sandwich. There's nothing else I actually know in my life.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay, so by the way,
That's good.
this is why you have to ask yourself this question at the end of the year, because there's so much else going on that it's really easy to just get confused. And so I honestly ask myself this question at the end of every single year.
Next up, also from the Department of taking stuff out of your paycheck, be sure to account for 529 college savings contributions if you're doing that, or your health savings account contributions.
Yeah, I don't know if you know how this works with the science and all, but we generally get less healthy. We get more expensive to take care of the older we get. And so even if everything's working now, all your plumbing and all that stuff, if it still works, it makes sense to put money into an HSA because in a very tax advantage way, because you're going to need that money later. I love my HSA contributions, but that's how I know I'm a boring person, because it's one of my favorite things to do is to put money in my HSA.
There also are limits on HSAs.
There are. Those are roughly like $7,500 for family contributions, somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm. And I think for individuals, 3,000-ish.
Yeah.
Okay. But still, if you're not doing that, you should do it.
If you can. I mean, again, what we're trying to do is to say, sure, the market disappointed you this year, but what you're allowed to do, how much of that are you doing? I mean, that's what this is about.
Right. For example, making substantial progress on paying down your debt.
Yeah, with rising interest rates, with consumer debt, what we're seeing is some of these intro offers or low interest rate cards or credit lines, man, it took a nasty turn mid-year. I mean, they started going up, and now you got people paying 29.99% interest on consumer debt. And so, if you busted your hump to get out of some of that debt to make sure that you're not exposed to those interest payments, then good on you. I'll say, again, you've mocked me on this show as well as everyone else have about my willingness to pay my mortgage in person every single month. I'll physically go to the location and I get a receipt that tells me how much of my mortgage balance has gone down that month. And I love it. And that's part of the progress I measure at the end of each year to say X numbers of dollars that I owe my mortgage bank have gone away because I have purchased more ownership in my home.
Yeah. Well, I just want to set the record straight. I did not mock you for paying your mortgage in person. And in fact, it's wonderfully cute because you usually take your daughter.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not so cute anymore. She's 13, so we argue the whole time there. But I will note that, yeah, that's what I do. And whether you mock me or not, that's fine.
Okay, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 625 attorneys across 11 offices, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast and my discussion with Pete the Planner about taking stock of your financial situation at the end of the year. Let's see. So what are we missing in terms of things that you can control, that you can do to brighten your financial situation?
I mean, just anything else in regards, again, paying down significant debt, making contributions to an IRA, even outside of your retirement plan at work, putting money into a brokerage account. I mean, look, I'll give people a free pass on Bitcoin for like 30 seconds. Let's say that you consistently are putting money, cash flowing it into dollar cost averaging into cryptocurrencies on a monthly basis. You can even consider those to be healthy activities. Because it's a consistent pouring fuel into your fire. When the fire's not burning so bright, sometimes you got to pour more fuel onto it. And that's what your income is meant to do in a year like 2022. And that didn't mean to rhyme, but it did. So now tell us, once we bring all these questions together, we can talk about power percentage. Okay.
How does the power percentage work?
Here's how it works. All right, everyone grab your crayon. I'm a recovering person that says crown, but you know what I mean? Like a Crayola crown, but it's crayon. I've been reformed. Grab your favorite writing utensil, and you're going to add up all the annual contributions in 2022 to your retirement plan at work. Again, this is not your account balance. This is how much you put in. How much you put in your retirement account, how much your employer put in. I give you a free pass. It's like a bingo free square in the middle. How much your employer put in on your behalf. You get to include that. You get to include anything you put into your Roth or traditional IRA, anything you put into a health savings account, and any amount you put into your college fund, and any amount of debt principal that has been paid down. Okay.
Even if it's just regularly part of my regular mortgage payment.
Totally. Because what this will actually do, Mason, and not as an aside, it will show you who has a 15-year and who has a 30-year. Because if you have a 30-year and you're the first year, you're not paying down very much principal, like close to nothing. If you're like me and you have a 10-year and you've got 8 years left, then you are chunking it away and it's making a big difference. So you add all those things up, add them all up. These are all the annual contributions / debt payments you've made in 2022, and then divide by your pre-tax income.
Pre-tax.
Okay. Yeah. Pre-tax. So let's say all these things add up to $20,000. Okay. And my household income's $100,000. What I end up with is that I have 20% of my income, 20% of my gross income have gone to increase my net worth in 2022. That's called our power percentage. And so I got to give you the key, because you got to know what these numbers mean. If your power percentage is below 10%, and you're a working person, because that matters. If you're a working person as opposed to a retired person, if you're below 10%, that's bad. I mean, that's a little bit scary. That means that not only do you have to look at the market went down, but you didn't do anything about it. Like you didn't help. Now, circumstantially, let's be honest. Sometimes it's because of job loss, or life hits you with lemons or whatever. But if you consistently are below 10%, that's a horrible sign, no matter what your income is and no matter what your assets are. 11 to 20% is okay. Obviously, we want it to be closer to 20%. 11 to 20% is okay. 21 to 34% is good. And 35 and above is great. All right. So the goal is to be above 35.
At the end of the year, when you're doing your calculations on New Year's Eve, are you always above 35?
These days, yeah, I'm 42 to 47.
Holy man.
First, let's get some disclaimers, context, whatever you want to say. I created this metric several years ago, right? I mean, we've even trademarked it, right? Power percent. And it's in what it does is it takes away this illusion that it's how much money you make that matters, or how much money you have that matters. It's what you do with whatever money you make, and how it matters, and how you structure your debt. And so no one should retire without a pension unless you're above 35%. Right? If you're going to retire, if you're making your way towards your retirement years and you do not have a pension, and you are not close to 35%, you shouldn't even consider retiring, because it means you're too dependent. That's what this is about. It means you're too dependent on your current income, right? And my theory has always been like, sure, my career is going better, probably making a little bit more than I used to, but I want to be less dependent on the money I make, not more dependent on the money I make. And so that's why it's 42%.
So if I make $1 million a year, but I'm not using any of that to increase my net worth, if I'm just spending it on comic books, that is not as good as the version of me that gets $100,000 a year, but socking away one way or another $30,000.
I know this is sounding quaint. My answer would be like, well, of course it's 100,000. No, I would 100 out of 100 times I would take the person making 100 grand that has a higher power percentage than the person that makes $1 million that saves nothing. This is why I love money, right? And not in a weird materialistic way, but it's the fact that you can take 2 school teachers earning a good but modest living with a really high power percentage for years, for decades, will have a better retirement than a partner in a law firm in downtown Indianapolis making 600 grand a year, who's got a 10% power percentage, the couple will have a better retirement than the partner at the law firm. And everyone says, whoa, yeah, right. No. It will happen. And I've seen it happen dozens of times. And that's why I love this, because it means anyone can actually create a lifestyle that is sustainable. Unfortunately, what we try to do is we look at the incomes that we have in good years and in bad, and we say, how can I squeeze the most out of this income in this year? And that's how you end up with a really low power percentage.
What I like about the power percentage is that it doesn't prescribe how much I should put into each pot. We're just looking for an overall percentage. If one year I decide, I really, really, really want to pay down the principal on my house, that is just as valuable, according to the power percentage, as me putting money somewhere else.
I'll say this, and this is where it gets a little wacky. When I'm 53, by the way, I turned 45 last week. Yeah. And
Stop it with the age thing.
When I turn 53, my house will be paid off and my kids will be in college, which means I will have already funded, I've been funding it. But what I'm saying, Mason, is, 8 years from now, I won't need a lot of the money I need now. And the money I'm putting towards things right now, like my mortgage and their college funds, I won't be doing that anymore 8 years from now. So if I don't redirect those monies towards other positive things, then my power percentage plummets. And that's bad. And I become more dependent on that income in a really critical time in my life. You hear about empty nesters all the time, right? Like, oh, what is it to be an empty nester? Empty nester is a really dangerous phase of your life, because if you reabsorb that money and start living it up, and you increase your lifestyle and decrease your power percentage, you make it harder to retire. You end up having a second honeymoon, which is great, but you make it harder on yourself.
I'm going to go on a little tangent here, just because I've been trying to do a better job of just kind of figuring out where my wife and I are retirement wise. So we started meeting with a financial coach this fall to get a sense of how we're positioned for retirement. So we plug all the numbers for our current assets and incomes into the timelines for paying down debt and when we expect to retire and all the things that I'm sure you're familiar with. And I was shocked, blown away to see that for as much money as we have saved, and it is not an inconsiderable amount of money. It is, significantly above the average for people our age. We still are on track to run out of money when I'm 83.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Isn't that weird?
It's really shocking. I just sort of assumed that, the money that we had saved would just sort of continue to keep working for us. But when I'm 83 or 84, we are just going to have Social Security.
Isn't that strange? Look, again, I live in this world, so but I still fascinated by those sort of calculations. A lot of times they're, Monte Carlo simulations that people use to get to that point. But I'll say this, Mason, when faced with that feedback, right? You put some input in, you got some output, and the output said, hey, you better be dead by 83. A lot of people they'll say to themselves, or they'll say to their honey bunny, they'll say, we'll see what happens. That's not the way to go. I can tell you that. It's not getting better. And that's the weird part about money. You increasing your contributions by $50 more a month, $62 a month, whatever. It makes a huge impact. Then it goes from 83 to 86. You catch a break on a good year with the market, and all of a sudden you're at 89. And before you know it, you're really old.
Then I don't want to do anything anyway.
Right. Then you just complain about it all.
Yeah. And as you say, there's so many variables here. There's what kind of lifestyle do we want to maintain? Is it similar to our current lifestyle? We want to dial it back.
The total other edge of this, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, is that, again, let's say right now, if my power percentage is 42, right? That means that I need 58% of my gross income, right? That's what that actually means. And then taxes come out of that. But once my mortgage is gone, and once I have my college paid for my kids, I won't need that much money, right? I won't need that much to live on. And so sometimes those financial planning calculations that say you have to die at 83 don't take into account that you're going to reduce your need for money by about 30%. come retirement. And so unless it did that, right? But a lot of times they don't account for that.
Yeah, I mean, it was fascinating to go back into the original calculations and adjust stuff. And as you say, I mean, think, well, if we can free up $50 here, we can free up X amount of money here, or as you know, as it turned out that we have pretty much decided to do, is to not put as much into the college savings.
Yeah.
As we had decided to put in, kind of took a U-turn on that. Then we're in a little bit better shape. And I think one of the principles that we talked about with you is when you're considering paying for college for your kids, don't put yourself in the poorhouse.
No, I mean, yeah, hopefully, look, it's like, what are the takeaways of listening to me on this podcast this year? Hopefully one of them is don't put yourself in the poorhouse to send your kid to college. Like, if that's the only thing anyone ever takes away from this, my time here, then I hope that's it.
Right. A couple of things that maybe investors should think a little bit about that is different this year. I understand we finally can get a decent return on savings. You can put money in CDs for 6 months or 5 years and get 4%, which I don't remember the last time we could do that.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is a positive. I mean, it all balances out, by the way, right? And it depends on if you are paying current rates on new debt, then you really don't win, because even though you're saving money, you're paying on those high rates. But if you're in a position where you don't have a lot of debt and you want to take advantage of these times, that's why sort of elder savers, if you will, love these times. They can actually get a CD that's not paying 0.2%. It's great. Yeah, it really is. Not to sound like the old guy here, but I'll remember back in the year 2000, there were 6% CDs. I mean, I remember it very specifically, 6% CDs in the year 2000. And we're getting closer to that being reality again. But I don't know. I don't know if we make our way up there. I don't know if we do. I feel like interest rates will come back down before then.
Yeah, I remember 1999. I remember looking at the CDs and go, 6%. I'm putting my money into the NASDAQ.
Genius.
Genius. Then my financial planner said, hey, you might not want to do that. I said, no.
It's the .com. There's no bubble.
Pushed all my chips over to the NASDAQ. That was probably the worst decision.
Nailed it. That's why you're the king.
Thank you so much. And then the second major development, which we already kind of hit on, is collapse. Too strong a word, collapse of cryptocurrency market.
No, I mean, it is a collapse. Like, it makes me sad. It's not even a matter of I'm glad I'm right. Well, of course I'm glad I'm right, and I am right. It makes me sad because it was a really shiny object that burned a lot of people. This is not to say no one should be in crypto. Don't misinterpret my statements here. What I'm saying is, if you were looking to grow your wealth quickly or catch a rising star, I don't know what any of these phrases mean, and you dump money into crypto at its height. Let's say that the Super Bowl, when all the, Matt Damon, fortune favors the brave. Well, Matthew Bourne, that didn't work. And the market's tanked since then. I feel sad for you because you didn't have the wherewithal to understand the context of what you were doing. And so, I don't know, there's a bunch of statistics out there that like 66% of people who have ever put money into crypto have lost money or something crazy like that. And that's not to say it won't eventually be a good thing. But for what it was in the moment, in the zeitgeist, it was a collapse and it was a disaster.
Gotcha. Any advice for crypto investors going forward, or just?
I mean, first of all, it's an asset class, right? And so, like many asset classes, it shouldn't exceed 10% of your assets, right? It's a speculative asset class. It shouldn't feel any different than like REITs or any other commodities. And so, if you want to do that, fine. I would also say I get increasingly nervous when retirement plan providers, retirement record keepers, if you will, say, oh, hey, within your 401k, you can now invest in crypto. I find that to be fiduciarily ill. I find it to be a bad decision, and it is being a bad steward of employees' money.
Gotcha. Any advice for 2023?
I don't know. You want to go predictions?
Sure.
I think in 2023, I wasn't ready to do this. I'm challenging myself. Here we go. 2023, interest rates start to come back down. I think the housing market will get hot again late in 2023 as interest rates come down. I think the recession, whatever it is over by the third quarter of 2023. And I think the stock market goes bonkers starting in the third quarter of 2023. And I think the market ends up close to 30% in 2023. Now, no one take my investment advice. None. No one. This is not investment advice. This is a parlor game. I'm guessing Mason's wait next. Like, this is a parlor game.
All right. Well, let's leave it at that. But I really like the optimism.
Look, I just think, I mean, they're cyclical. Okay, you know what? Since we're here's why I think this. Last giant down year, 2008, down 38%. The next year, we were up 23%. Prior to that, 2002, we were down 23%. In 2003, we're up 26%. I mean, it's just how this works, man. I mean, I'm not using my crystal ball that is my bald head. This is just how this works.
Okay. You got to be in it to win it, though.
I would never say that. That's ridiculous.
That's what I say when I buy lottery tickets.
Yeah, that exactly. You sound like a guy hitting the scratch offs in line at the gas station.
There you go. All right. Well, I hope you and your family have a great holiday.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy some figgy pudding. Put it on my tab.
My thanks again to Pete Dunn. A quick reminder, his column on personal finance appears regularly in the print edition of IBJ, and you can find several years' worth of his work at ibj.com. And before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in the latest print edition of IBJ I want to point out. First up, Simon Property Group is getting a leg up on the emerging trend of online-only retailers moving into brick-and-mortar stores, a strategy that analysts say could have a big payoff for the Indianapolis-based shopping mall giant as it looks to develop new tenants. Mickey Shuey has more on Simon's partnership with Chicago-based Leap Services. Also in this week's issue, Susan Orr reports on the growth of local startup Connected, which helps users automate their outreach to customers via LinkedIn. And Dave Lindquist connects with media mogul Jeff Smulyan about his new book, a career retrospective titled Never Ride a Roller Coaster Upside Down. Again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it is easier to access all of the latest local news about business and politics and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you are a subscriber. And here's a new development. We have wrapped all of IBJ's content together with all of the stories, columns, and podcasts from our sister publication, Inside Indiana Business. And that works out to about $3 per week for actionable information about every notable business development across the state. You won't find Indiana's story told with this kind of breadth and depth anywhere else. Just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.